and 3.
So if there aren't any further questions about class last week, we can jump right into the 2-minute challenge. Since we've already been prompted for the 2-minute challenge, which is called scheduling conflict in the auditorium, I'll just briefly go through it so that we can jump right into the decision-making framework. Basically, it's recruiting season here at the College of Business, and you would really like to interview with Google. You have 2 time slots available to interview. One's at 3 p.m. and one is at 7 p.m. At 3 p.m., unfortunately, you have a class. It's a 24-person discussion-based seminar that really requires you to be in class or it will affect your grade. And then at 7 p.m., you have a friend coming in from UCLA. He's coming to Champaign to see you, to go out to dinner with you because he's going through a tough time with his family going through a divorce. So this is a tough decision to make. So in order to figure out what to do, we want to go through the decision-making framework. First, you want to figure out what issues come from this. Then, what rules apply to this situation, the questions that you can ask, the resources that are available, and then the options that you have and who is affected by each one, and then ultimately what will you do. So let's just start off with the issues. What are some of the issues that come about with this scheduling conflict? Lauren?
Some of the issues would be whether or not to take the interview at 7 and ditch your friend, or take the interview at 3 and miss the class, or just don't take the interview at all and miss out on that opportunity.
Right, so there's 3 very basic issues that come about, and they all have some pretty sincere consequences associated with them. So in knowing that, what are some of the rules that apply? Lauren?
There may be some rules in terms of like your class policy with your instructor. There's also the unspoken rule with your friendship. Since they are going through a rough time, you kind of have that, they're counting on you to be there. And there also might be rules with Google. If you try to ask for a different time, they may not have those options available.
Those are all great rules for the 3 options that are available. And something else we should think about is BCS. It's a great resource we have here on campus, but there might be some rules associated with asking recruiters if you could have another time slot. That might be something that we're not allowed to do. So then what are some of the questions you can ask from knowing this? Lauren?
I mean, you would have to ask yourself, how will your friend react if you miss an hour of spending time with them to take the interview? Also, how would Google react if you ask them for a different time slot that's not readily available? Or if you think about the questions you'd have to ask yourself when you're talking to your instructor, because since attendance is a main part of your grade, they may not be very generous in offering you that time.
Exactly, and associated with the class in particular, you kind of want to ask the question, will me missing this hour class affect me doing well on my homework or me doing really well on an exam? Those are all things that you have to think about when asking those questions. So what are some of the resources you have to get those questions answered? Lauren?
A great resource, like you said, would be BCS, because this is probably not the first time that it's happened, so you're going to want to figure out if this has happened to someone else before and how did they handle it. You could also use your friend that's coming in from town as a resource. Maybe bring it up to them and see what they say. If they really aren't bothered by just the hour, that's a great resource. And then maybe talk to another friend who's been in this situation, or talk to your instructor.
Right, those are really great resources. And another resource that we have, and we've been talking about since the beginning of this semester, is our personal values. And though this doesn't seem to really have to do with the situation, our values are something that we can use, kind of our personal mind and our input on the situation. Using those values to kind of decide what we can do is also a great resource. So then finally, knowing all of this, what are the 3 options we have, and then who's affected by them? Lauren?
The first option that you have is to take the 3 o'clock interview slot and miss your class. For that, the instructor may be affected, your classmates, but you specifically would be affected by missing that class period. Another option would be taking the 7 p.m. and missing the time with your friend. You would also be affected, and your friend would definitely be affected. Or you can just not take the interviews at all and just miss out on that opportunity, in which case you would be most definitely affected, but your friend nor your instructor or your grade in the class would be affected.
Right, and another thing to think about that we haven't considered yet is that for your class, it may be possible that your teacher has a policy or an unwritten policy on students who have an interview with the company. Maybe there's some type of makeup work your teacher can offer, so that's something you want to think of when going through the options. So now that we have all of that kind of laid out on the table, what will you do in this situation? Lauren?
In this situation, I would first go to my resources and talk to my friend and see how he or she feels about the situation, like missing that hour of dinner, maybe rescheduling it or doing something besides dinner. Because I know the friends that I have would probably be pretty understanding of such an awesome opportunity like interviewing with Google, that they would understand and just take that and just let me take the interview. But then I'd make it up to them later. But that would probably be the option that I would choose.
Exactly. I think definitely in this situation, if I were in this situation, I would have a really tough time passing up on the dinner with my friend, but I would also have a tough time passing up on class because I do care about my grades. And similarly, I would really want the opportunity with Google, so I would try and find a way to get there. So I think the option I personally would choose would be to talk to my teacher and use that resource and see what I can do, just because I would hate to ruin the relationship with BCS and Google and trying to ask for a different interview slot. So that's pretty much all we have for the 2-minute challenge. Thanks for being so great with us.